Hello, my name's Kate and I'm one of the careers consultants working with Newcastle University, and welcome to this pre-recorded session focusing on key techniques and principles of writing within the traditional recruitment process. Now, there are a number of different methods to gain access to employment, making speculative inquiries, networking and recruitment agencies, for example, but this session today will focus specifically on applying for jobs you find being advertised online directly by employers seeking a candidate for a specific role. We'll be focusing on principles that cover the different documents often needed throughout this application process, and for the purpose of this session today, I'll be referring to these as recruitment documents, and this includes CVs, cover letters, personal statements, and answers to application questions. While these parts of the recruitment process are all unique, they do have a common purpose. Now, that common purpose is assessing if you're the right person for the job. To fulfil this purpose, you need to show throughout the recruitment process you have what the selector is looking for. These requirements often centre around your motivations, skills, qualities and experience. Because of this common purpose, there are key principles that span across all these documents which are key to a quality application. So what are these principles? Well, the first is tailoring. Now we have established that the purpose of a recruitment document is to assess if you're the right person for the job, and there's a certain criteria to demonstrate this, it's easy to see why these documents must be tailored to the specific role being advertised. This principle of tailoring automatically does away with the all too common practice of submitting generic documents. Though it may be much quicker to submit the same CV for several roles, it does not guarantee you'll be demonstrating the specific criteria that employers are looking for in the candidate to their advertised vacancy. Therefore, it's a matter of quality and not quantity. The second principle is evidence. So you know you need to reflect the skills and qualities the employer is looking for, but anyone can say they have communication and teamwork skills. These documents should use your experience in academia and your extracurricular activities like work experience, jobs and society roles to evidence your skills and qualities. How you do this and what it looks like will be different depending on the recruitment document, which brings us to the final principle of format. You'll have heard the saying, don't judge a book by its cover, and whilst this is an excellent principle to live by, it's not one that applies to recruitment documents in an application process. This is particularly true of CVs and cover letters, which have traditional formats that most employers would like you to abide by. Now, that's not saying that there is no room for creativity. Moving away from the traditional format can be an advantage in some cases, most often in speculative applications. However, if you're applying to an advertised vacancy online, you should do your research on the company and organisation and their hiring practices first before you choose to move away from accepted format and principles. Now let's take a closer look at how you can tailor your recruitment documents. The first thing to start off with is understanding the criteria you need to demonstrate in order to show you're the right person for the job. So where do you actually find these details? Now, because we're looking at vacancies that have been advertised online, you'll most likely have a job advert, description and person specification to work from. Here you can see an advert from a recently recruited for internship that was advertised through My Career. You can see in this advert and description that I've already highlighted key skills, qualities and experience, and from this I have a really good idea of what I need to tailor my recruitment documents to. But I also have something called a person specification. Now, one of the most important words to take note of on this specification is the word essential. This means that if you don't demonstrate this list of skills and attributes within your application, it won't be successful. So think of these lists of essential criteria as the objects for an assignment. You're not going to pass if they're not found within your submission. So how can you evidence this criteria within your recruitment documents? Well, this will differ depending on the type of recruitment document you're submitting. When free typing for a cover letter, personal statement or application questions, you can use something called the STAR technique. When tackling other documents like a CV or a LinkedIn profile, you can use your work experience, education and interest section to evidence your skills. So let's have a look at a few examples, starting with the CV. So this is actually a common mistake we see on CVs, and that's to include a separate key skills section that's often just a list of the attributes on the person's specification. And often candidates will think this will show the employer they have the criteria that they're looking for. While this is more tailored than a generic document, anyone can just list a set of skills. There's no context here to show where you developed the skill or how you've used them, so provides little evidence for the recruiter assessing your CV. Instead of doing this, what we want you to do is show your skills throughout the different sections on your CV, and in particular your work experience and education sections. So here you can see an example of this. I have exactly the same work experience entry, but instead of listing those key skills separately, I've built them into the bullet points that provide details of the role. The employer can still see your critical thinking skills, your ability to meet a deadline, organisation and written communication, but by building them into the sentence, it provides more context of when you're using and therefore strengthens the evidence. So you can also change how you're wording your experience on your CV to tailor it to the role further. Here you can see the same experience entry, but I've been able to market it in two different ways in order to show the recruiter the evidence that they may be looking for. You'll see in the entry for the CV applying to the research role, I've highlighted working as part of a team, research methods and techniques, whereas when applying to a sales role, I've focused on more common skills and attributes associated with this industry, such as working under pressure to tight deadlines and targets. This is the same entry of experience, but I'm able to market it differently in order to evidence the skills and attributes that the recruiter has listed on their job description or person specification. So that deals with tailoring and evidence of a CV, but as I mentioned, you'll need to take a slightly different approach when tackling recruitment documents like cover letters, personal statements, or application questions to provide a little bit more detail. Now you can provide this detail using that STAR technique. Like many things in the employability world, STAR is an acronym which stands for Situation, Task, Action and Result. Following these steps is all about providing evidence to support any claims you make regarding your skills during the recruitment process. For example, you may profess to have excellent communication skills, but anyone can say this. You need to give an example as evidence, and when used correctly, the STAR technique ensures you providing all the necessary details to fully back up that claim. If we look at this acronym in more detail, the first step in the techniques are all about providing a foundation of context. This means describing where your example took place and often when you did it, and you also want to explain the particulars of the task you're focusing on by outlining what you were doing and the aim of the undertaking. It's actually the actions that provide the evidence to your claim. Though your chosen situation and task might require the skill you're looking to illustrate, this doesn't mean you're actually using it effectively. Therefore, it's the reflection on the actions you took that's vital to this whole technique. Our final point to conclude is result. So this is the chance for you to outline the outcome and show the positive impact your communication skills brought about. This concludes the traditional STAR technique, but just to complicate things a little bit more, you can consider adding an extra R for reflection. This can enhance your example even further by allowing you space to reflect on why this skill is important to the role you're applying to, and therefore allows you to demonstrate your understanding of the job and show why you're the right candidate for it. Let's have a look at an example of this technique then. Imagine you've been asked to write a personal statement demonstrating your suitability for a role that lists communication, negotiation, and team working as essential skills. You'd first need to lay out this situation. So, when working in event planning for hospitality during my first year of university, I was able to use my verbal communication skills to build an effective relationship with a colleague who had different views on how to encourage collaboration and information sharing across the team. Next is the task. I advocated for an electronic communication and record keeping system, whereas my colleague's preference was for in-person team meetings. We follow this context setting with the most important section, the actions. The first most important step I took was to set aside some time with my colleague to listen to both perspectives. I recognised that language was important in this conversation. As such, I stayed away from phrases such as the right way and favoured instead open terms such as one effective way. This allowed us both to listen to each other's viewpoints, recognise our shared goals of enhanced collaboration and the positives in each method. After laying this encouraging foundation, I also took the time to share and address any concerns about each viewpoint with my colleague, which created enhanced understanding and opened the door to compromise as a solution. Here you can see my actions focus specifically on the skills I'm looking to evidence. I don't provide the actions that allowed for the information sharing, instead I focused on those that show communication and negotiation, such as highlighting the language I used and active listening. I can then end this example by showing the outcome. The result of the dialogue was a successful combination of each approach with an electronic system for instant updates and regular collaboration on live projects in-person team meetings to allow for planning and collaboration on future events. Though this example is already tailored as your evidence in the skills the employer is looking for, you can take this one step further and reflect on how you'll be able to utilise these skills in the role. Remember, you have a job advert and description to help you with this. So for example, I'll be able to utilise my communication and negotiation skills to encourage successful team working in this role when dealing with XYZ responsibility. So that deals with the evidencing and tailoring of these recruitment documents. But what about that formatting? So we're going to discuss CVs first and a specific type called a chronological CV. There are other formats of CVs such as skill-based, academic or combination CVs. However, it's the chronological style which is by far the most used and the most appropriate for a student or a graduate. This is an example of what a CV may look like for a graduate or professional level role. As you can see, it's well spaced out, sections are clearly identifiable, and the formatting is consistent across the whole document. There are a few important details to pay close attention to. The first is the name. Your name is one of the most important details on your CV, and this should be the biggest bit of information right at the top in a prominent place on the document. You don't need to title this document CV or curriculum vitae. The reader knows what it is. It's much more important that they associate the information they read with your name. The next thing to take note of is the order of your CV. Though this is called a chronological CV, each section is actually formatted in reverse chronological order, so your most recent to your most historic. This applies to both your education and work experience sections. If in your work experience section you find that you have an entry that is far more relevant to the role but is more historic, you can separate your experience into two sections: relevant experience and additional experience. This is another excellent way of tailoring your CV to fit its purpose. If you feel like all your experience is relevant to the role or you don't have much to include, you can just stick to one work experience section. Your headings should also be clear and help mark each section. A recruiter will spend on average 5 to 30 seconds assessing your CV to determine if it's something they would like to disregard or read further. With this in mind, it's essential that they can find key information quickly. If your headings are the same font and size as the rest of your document, or your work experience is listed in one long paragraph, it becomes much harder for the recruiter to find the key information they're looking for. If you choose to use a colour on your CV, that is fine. However, it's a good idea to make sure this colour stands out if printed in black and white. Not all recruiters will look at your CV on the computer. They may have a printed stack and it's unlikely that that will be done in colour. Therefore, if your headings are in a light yellow or green, for example, they'll not stand out on your document. So make sure any colour you use is a dark one. When considering what fonts and styles to use for your text and headings, it's important to ensure you remain consistent throughout your CV. You'll notice that though the headings, fonts and colour are different to the rest of the sections, each main heading is the same as each other. Each subheading is also the same, and even small details like the style and placement of the bullet points are the same. Consistency is key to readability. On the topic of bullet points, make sure you use these effectively as they're an essential component of a good CV. Don't just break up a paragraph of text into bullet points. Make sure that each one is standalone statement. And finally, that it does need to be no longer than 2 pages or one side of A4. So that covers CVs, but what about personal statements, application questions and cover letters? Well, personal statements and application questions don't have much formatting to consider. These should take the form of any traditional piece of writing using full sentences, paragraphs and traditional grammar. It is important to pay close attention to a word count if you're given one and stick to the traditional recruitment practices of size 11 to 12 fonts and easy to read ones like Calibri, Arial or Times New Roman. Apart from this, there's nothing much more to say. However, cover letters require a little bit more attention. As the name would suggest, a cover letter is a style of letter and therefore you need a traditional letter writing format. Though cover letters are most widely typed and emailed now, there's no longer an actual need for the addresses. It is still traditional recruitment practice, so important you include them. As you can see on screen, the candidate's address is listed at the top right hand side with the recruiter's address below this and to the left. You should then address the letter ideally to a named contact. However, you can use generic terms such as Dear Hiring Manager if you're unable to locate one. Other small instances of formatting to note is the listed job vacancy details, which you'll find on the job advert, and the date. The body of the cover letter follows standard formatting for written text, with around 4 paragraphs focusing on your motivations, what attracted you to the role in the organisation, and why you're a suitable candidate for the position. This should be no longer than 1 page at most. How you end your letter will depend on how you addressed it. If you use a name contact, you can close your letter with yours sincerely, and if you used a general greeting, you can instead use yours faithfully. This does bring us to the end of the pre-recorded session today, but you can find further advice on writing CVs, cover letters and application forms on our website alongside examples of formatting to help you when writing these recruitment documents. Just go to www.ncl.ac.uk/careers and look for the CVs, applications and LinkedIn profile section. Here you can find information, work booklets and masterclasses to help you when writing these documents. If you have one you would like to be reviewed, you can also book an appointment with the Career Service through your My Career account. If you're unsure of what type of appointment to book, you can use the handy appointment finder tool and select the options most relevant to your query. These appointments are also a great starting point if you're looking for help finding the right type of vacancies to apply to, or even if you're not too sure of your next steps and what you would like to do. Our advisors are available from 11 until 5 p.m. Monday to Friday to support you no matter what stage you are at. Remember, you can also follow us on our social media channels to stay up to date with the latest events and advice, and you're also welcome to connect with staff on Twitter and LinkedIn. We often share resources and opportunities for you to get involved in. Thank you for tuning into this session today on the principles of writing for the recruitment process.